Hi, everybody!
So a fellow YouTuber named KarnEX recently did a live stream and briefly covered the fact GOG highlighted Digimon World 1 with two different shorts that were more or less the same audio, just with different visuals. One of them featured some rather crude 3D animations, the other one featured just straight up Digimon World gameplay. Normally, I would just pass that off as something that's neat but not noteworthy. However, when I looked at the Digimon World games on GOG Dreamlist, something I had previously mentioned in another Digimon video, I noticed they have really been climbing up the rankings recently, with Digimon World 1 being the first entry on the second page. World 3 was the second entry on page 15, and World 2 was the last entry on page 17. So this got me thinking, what could this actually mean for these old titles? So for those who don't know what GOG is, it's a storefront that is primarily focused around the preservation of old video games. The Dreamlist is kind of a thing that tells them titles they should prioritize the pursuit of, hence why I would normally just discount this little piece of information as just digital noise with very little intrinsic value. But the fact we actually have two shorts from GOG got me to thinking on it deeper. I think this actually means we have a deal in place with Bandai Namco for at least the first Digimon World title already, because why bother putting the spotlight on it? Also, when you consider how high up Digimon World 3 is, and you start to see, there's probably not just smoke but some actual fire here. Now, this could all still turn out to be nothing at all, but considering the resurgence of Digimon in recent times, thanks to how aggressively Bandai have been promoting it, thanks to things like PlayStation States of Play, and it widely considered the standout during Summer Game Fest, and it starts to make sense as to why GOG would be interested in getting these titles preserved. Also consider this, why bother going to the trouble of making content for that one specific game if they weren't about to drop it onto the GOG storefront in the very near future? I think this is GOG pretty much showing their hand and saying get hyped. So at minimum, I would expect an announcement to drop in the coming days or weeks for Digimon World 1 at the very least. So let's briefly discuss how likely it is we're going to see World 2 and 3 also drop onto GOG storefronts in the very near future. Personally, I think the chances of them appearing are pretty high, considering they're two of the more beloved Digimon games in existence. And with Digimon World 3, you really start to see the DNA that would make up the bulk of Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth and Cyber Sleuth Hackers Memories gameplay. That same DNA is also going to be very present with Digimon Story Time Stranger, which I've got another video about, and that'll drop in a couple of hours, so consider hitting the subscribe button and ringing the bell so you won't miss that one when it goes live. Also, I'll give a teaser right now. The reason I mentioned DNA a lot a few moments ago is because that video is going to cover DNA Digivolution and how it's directly borrowing a mechanic from World 3. But I think the chances of both releasing are pretty high since they would do pretty well for both GOG and Bandai. Plus, who doesn't love money? I know myself and a lot of others who grew up with these games would buy them. Plus, people who just generally love to play franchises, when a new entry comes out, would absolutely want to pick these up before they play Time Stranger later in the year. Plus, if you look at the very early Digimon games, none of them really play like each other. The first World game is basically an extension of the V-Pets, which are themselves a spin-off of Tamagotchis, focused more at boys. World 2 is a dungeon-crawling RPG, and World 3 is a standard turn-based JRPG at its core, so they actually have reasons for existing. And if they do well, who's to say Bandai won't revisit the idea of having multiple different Digimon spin-off projects out there? The only reason I could think of that Bandai wouldn't do this is because they plan on releasing these older games on a service like PlayStation Plus or via Game Pass, but then they'd be losing out on potential sales. But what do you think? If you think I'm completely off base here, feel free to let me know in the comments. Also consider checking out one of my previous Digimon videos, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.